I'm his dad. I'm not going to throw him out there if he doesn't want to, but I like him out there getting hit in the face a little bit, hitting somebody else, responding to adversity. I think that there's a certain degree of mental toughness and perseverance that you can get in other sports, but that I personally do like in football.
This is Generation Health. We bring you the latest in news, cutting-edge research, and time-tested best practices helping you live a longer, healthier life. We have got a fantastic show for you today. We've got some details about what's in the bottle. We've got a behind the counter. And then after that, we're going to have a nice long chat about kids in sports. We're going to talk about getting kids involved, helping them find the thing that gets them moving and that they enjoy, and also kind of how it applies to us individually, particularly with Josiah and his kids. The Nobel Prize in Chemistry was just awarded to 3 computer scientists who taught computers how to predict the shape that proteins would fold themselves into. I know, this sounds fascinating, right? But trust me, this has huge implications for our health. Proteins are more than just chicken and steak. There are millions of them, and each one has a different job, based in large part upon the final shape, three-dimensionally speaking, that it folds itself into. You've got your muscle-bound proteins, like actin and myosin, that are used to help us flex and move. There's the enzyme proteins, like lactase, that break down the milk sugar lactose, which is a lifesaver for those of us who are lactose intolerant. And then there's proteins like insulin that deliver signals, keeping our blood sugar in check. And we've even got antibody proteins that fight off those nasty invaders, like bacteria and viruses. Each of those functions is determined by the complex three-dimensional shape that the protein folds itself into. And while scientists have understood the basics of what causes a protein shape to come about, it's been about on the level of saying a house has 4 walls and a roof. That's true, but it doesn't really prepare you to build one. Now, these brilliant minds, Demi Hassabis, John Jumper, and David Baker, used artificial intelligence to create a program they called AlphaFold. After it analyzed the 200 million known proteins, this program was able to predict how proteins will fold themselves based on the enzymes that are put in. But they didn't stop there. The latest version of AlphaFold, AlphaFold 3, is now able to reverse engineer a protein by starting with the final shape and then figuring out what amino acids are needed to make that shape. That means that researchers can custom design proteins to fight specific diseases and create brand new medicines, even medicines designed for a single individual. AlphaFold is now owned by Google, which recently started a project called Isomorphic Labs to work directly with pharmaceutical companies for that exact purpose. We may not have flying cars and personal jetpacks, but this is definitely starting to move us into that science fiction territory. And sticking with the personalized health theme, ever wonder why the diet that your friend swears by leaves you feeling awful? A lot of that comes down to the individual microbiome, the flora in your gut, and how that particular set of flora interacts with different foods. Researchers at Yale just mapped out, for the first time, 150 food compounds and how they interact with and even reshape the microbes in certain individuals while having little or no effect on others. While there's been a lot of research into macronutrients like fiber and how they can affect the gut, very little was known about the enormous number of smaller food compounds and how the different gut bacteria respond to them. Andrew Goodman, the researcher at the head of this particular lab, said, quote, "We were surprised by the level of variability. The same dietary compound could dramatically reshape some individuals' gut microbial communities while having almost no impact on other people's microbiomes," unquote. This new microbe map is one of the first steps toward beginning to be able to predict how a person's gut will respond to different foods without the trial and error anecdotal experiences that we have today. Imagine being given personalized dietary advice based on what your gut actually likes. This research is paving the way for personalized nutrition plans that help us manage health risk and conditions. You'll know exactly what you should eat and what you should avoid without the late-night stomach gurgling experiences. On the downside, This will make church potlucks a lot less fun. Joey,
Yes.
Daily Essentials, as the name states. I love this name because it is the most self-explanatory of our products. This is your daily essential. You should take this every day because it's essential every day. Tell me about Daily Essentials. What is it?
So we'll start with kind of what we do know for certain, that deficiency in nutrients can lead to severe health issues.
Sure.
And in other cases, suboptimal functioning. All right. It's also estimated that 80% of Americans consume less than the RDA of one or more nutrients. Okay. There are studies also, comprehensive studies done by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, that the average American diet is lacking in many nutrients. We eat a lot of processed foods. Okay. Number one, minimal intake of plant foods and whole foods. Okay. Also, the whole foods and plant foods we are taking in, due to the industrialization of the food industry, the whole foods we are getting, while still extremely and undoubtedly, uncontroversially beneficial, we're just behind the eight ball a little bit compared to where we could be if it wasn't for those things.
Sure.
Also, our lives, we're exposed in the environment, air, food, heavy metals, food additives, medications, alcohol, very high chronic stress. So the burdens on our bodies and individuals can increase the demand for certain nutrients beyond what the basic long-time RDA amounts have been. So again, just very individual situations going on related to that in terms of what you're eating, the source of it, what you're exposed to, et cetera.
Okay.
So, that said, if you're honestly a very conscientious eater who eats a primarily whole food diet, you're well-rounded with plant sources. From a micronutrient standpoint, your need for a multivitamin may be very minimal or non-existent, okay? The reality is that not many people, myself included at times, fall into that category. Yes, it's a very attainable goal, but it is not an easy goal to achieve.
I know on the blog, we actually recently talked about a study published in The Lancet that looked at worldwide deficiencies. And it said that 99.3% of the global population was deficient in at least one micronutrient.
Wow.
That 5 billion people don't get enough iodine, vitamin E, or calcium. 5 billion don't get enough iron, and 4 billion don't get sufficient riboflavin, folate, and vitamin C.
Wow.
Just on surface levels. So this is a big issue.
Yeah. And related to that, kind of a step down, even if you eat a very good diet, there can be just some gaps.
Yeah.
So maybe from a macronutrient standpoint, you're eating very well, you're eating whole foods. Maybe you just hate whatever. You hate green vegetables, or you hate certain types of things, or you don't really eat them, or you think you do, but the reality is you don't, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So even a generally very good diet still has the potential to leave some gaps. So, a quality multivitamin, a product that is very safe, outside of cost and daily intake, doesn't really have downsides, can cover your bases if potentially there are some gaps there.
Okay, so tell us about the dailies. Tell us about our multivitamin. Why do we have it the way that we do?
Yeah, so multivitamins in general, you're not looking for therapeutic effect. You're looking to cover bases. Outside of maybe like the B vitamins, which are in pretty therapeutic amounts, and plus it's a water-soluble vitamin, so your body's not really storing it. But you are not looking for, again, study levels. Like if you say, if I took this much vitamin B during this case, or maybe that's a bad example, vitamin C for this, or vitamin D for immune, whatever it is, you can't extrapolate that to say, well, that's in my multivitamin. Levels are critical.
So in a multivitamin, this is just covering bases. This is not therapeutic levels of these things.
Yes, that is kind of the ceiling on it.
Okay.
If your doctor tells you your vitamin D level's low, you're not going to get movement in your 25-OHD by the amount of D that's in our multis or anybody else's.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make that end of things clear. But what's really different about ours, the key term is bioavailability. So there is a gap between a nutrient being stamped on a bottle accurately and what your body does when it takes that ingredient into your body. Okay. So again, you can look at a product that has 100 milligrams of magnesium on both. RDA is the same then, obviously. And so what's the difference? Why is this one more money? It's the form that it's in, the salt form. Almost all nutrients must be bound to something, must be bound to a salt. Or they can't be in a product, in a capsule, in a tablet, just free. They have to be bound to a form or a salt. When you do that, in your manufacturing, you're trying to make a product, you're trying to hit an RDA, you're trying to hit a certain number. Typically what's done is you make it in a safe way, yes, but in the cheapest, most efficient way possible.
Sure.
So you've got magnesium oxides, okay, calcium carbonates. They're not bad. They're not worthless. They're just of a lower level when you start talking about what the difference is in quality. So again, it's about that gap between what's on the bottle and maybe 100% accurate, we assume so, and then what your body does with this same amount of maybe the actual ingredient you're looking at based on the form.
Right. Okay. So if you're just throwing fake numbers out there, if you've got 100 milligrams of something, but you can only, the bioavailability is so low that you only process 15%, then you're processing 15 milligrams. But if you've only got 50 milligrams, but it's 50% bioavailable, then you're getting 25 milligrams. So even though it's a lower number, the higher bioavailability makes a big difference.
It does, yes. And what the specifics are can get a little muddy and a little controversial.
Sure. Yeah.
But the one study I found showed that, for example, a big one is magnesium. Because there are things, our thiamine, our B1, it's hydrochloride. That's the most basic one that you're going to see in a grocery store one. That's in ours. It's because there's not documentation and studies showing that it's needed to go to an elevated form. So it doesn't mean that everything on that one label in the grocery store is bad and it's got to be changed. It's done based on evidence and science to make sure that it's worthwhile to do that.
Individual items in here.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's why this, there can be a lot of detail, but I think the broad theme of what's going on here is important. So back to the point of magnesium. Mm-hmm. So when magnesium is chelated or bound to other amino acids, a mineral chelate, mm-hmm. the absorption is 8.8 times when it's bound to oxide.
Wow.
So again, they both may say 100, but one's mag oxide, one is a chelate of glycinate, malate, etc., and the absorption is totally different. That's the difference between the number on the label and what your body is doing with it. Calcium is chelated in our product in the same way. Another example, folate. So folic acid is how it's typically taken. Mm-hmm. Folic acid is good. Folic acid works. Folic acid is fine for the vast majority of people. Okay. It's never worthless. It's never not absorbed at all. Nothing like that. But there is the potential for a significant number of people that have a metabolic deficiency in activating that folic acid to methylfolate. So in our product, it's given to you as methylfolate. It doesn't need activated. A grocery store basic multivitamin is given to you as folic acid, which for most people is just fine. They activate it, they methylate it. But not everyone can do that.
Got it.
So again, this is not about saying everybody must take this or you're not getting enough folic acid. That's not the case, but it could be you. It could be.
Yeah.
And that's, again, just the general theme of what the difference is, why ours is priced the way it is, but why those forms are in there are critical. I think the big thing is that there's other, many examples, but I think the folic acid's a big one just to get the theme of the bioactive mm-hmm. form in the body. And then the chelates, what you're doing with those minerals. The other thing is whenever you have something like a magnesium chelate with it's bound to multiple different things to get you that amount of magnesium. What that does is it also makes sure you're not overloading a given pathway. Because we'll have people say, glycinate hurts the best. And that very well may be true. But when it's all glycinate, you're still going to have some limit of absorption relative to whenever there's a lot of it, but then there's also malate. And yes, there's some oxide in there. Some is fine. You're giving your body different pathways to get that magnesium.
Makes sense. And there are 40 nutrients in this. So we're not going to go nutrient by nutrient.
Exactly.
But you're giving excellent examples of why every single one of these has been chosen to be in here.
Exactly.
People can rest assured that this is the best data-backed, science-backed form of it for mass absorbability, bioavailability. That's the word.
Correct. There you go. Bioavailability. That's the key thing to understand here. Beyond just the broader picture multivitamin stuff, I think we kind of got that point. But yeah, this is what truly makes ours different.
Yeah. Okay. So we understand who would take this, which is pretty much most people, why they would take it. what are the details on how to take it? Just for standard use, what are we looking at?
Yeah. So 2 a day is what we would recommend, the most basic level. Just again, kind of to cover your bases.
Okay.
Morning with food. There's a lot of nutrients in here. Sometimes the B vitamins can upset your stomach a little bit. So take it with food. You can do 2 twice a day. And you definitely would want to split this up because there's a lot of water soluble nutrients in there that your body will not hold in excess. So when you can give it kind of another round, so to say, of the nutrients, that's critical to do. So 2 a day is the primary recommendation. If you want to go to 2 twice a day, especially maybe some stress, some energy concerns, you can see if that can help you, to add that 2 twice a day.
Makes sense. Daily Essentials, one of our most core products. And again, I love the name. What is going on in your lives? I know, Josiah, you got kids in sports, right? Going every which way?
Every sport, almost. It seems like. No, my oldest is playing football, tackle football. And then another son is playing soccer and baseball. And bowling. We got someone in a bowling league.
Wow.
How about that?
How's that going?
There was only one game so far, but
Does he curve or straight?
I don't know. I have no idea.
He hasn't developed his style yet.
No curve yet.
Yeah, it's still grown into the whole thing.
There.
But yeah, man, we're everywhere right now for sure.
Is this new for you guys, or how has the sports thing been in your lives to this point?
No, I mean, I know that there's a lot of or there at least can be some controversy around tackle football. Just with all the, CTE and concussion protocols and all of that. And so we kind of scaled. So my oldest, he played 2 seasons of flag football just to kind of learn the game. Does he like it? How interested in it is he? And then he was hanging out with a group of his buddies over the summer, and they're like, "You should play." And we said, "Yeah." Practices every night of the week.
Wow.
For 2.5 hours. You're up there late, and then gets home. So I was worried that he's going to be like, "Oh no, I have no time to, relax after school or play video games." And there is a little bit of that, but he loves it.
Does he?
That's awesome.
I've been so surprised.
What do you think he likes the best about it? That whole experience. And I know we've zeroed in on football now, but
yeah, I think for my oldest anyway, I think he likes the fact that there's a social element to it. It's his buddies, male kind of togetherness and, overcoming stuff that he really enjoys. But I think he loves the discipline.
Wow.
Which is I think he likes the routine. And of course he likes the sport. He likes football, so he's learning more about it. But
are you guys worried at all about the CTE thing or broken limbs or anything like that?
As far as the concussion stuff, I mean, I think they've done a pretty good job. They wear those Guardian caps.
Do they?
Yeah,
that's great.
I know Guardian caps get a lot of heat for the NFL. It's why are they wearing these things? There's this padded case that goes on your helmet.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so in the NFL, they started allowing.
So it's like a helmet.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
But they started allowing. They started allowing. That's one way to put it.
mm-hmm.
They started allowing players in the NFL to wear them during games. So it's a whole big thing right now. But yeah. So as far as our concern about it, yeah, I mean, I think there is, but they seem pretty cautious. Teams.
Yeah,
and
things
stuff.
have changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough because I've young boys too, a little younger, and my older one's just not interested, and that's fine. But I played, through high school, middle school, through high school, and just 1 year low level college, and so I am still very biased towards it. I mean, my older one kind of, do you want to play? And my younger one is maybe a little more physical,
Scrappy.
Yeah, he wants to play, and so there's this part of me that's why football? There's all these sports. You can learn the values of team sport so many other ways. Why even, if I'm being honest, am I putting a little bit of a bug in his ear towards football? Mm-hmm. It's hard to quantify, for me. And I think some of it's psychological, all those things. But I do think that there's something to a young boy getting hit, not punched in the face, but just getting, you got a helmet on, you got pads on, somebody runs into you. How do you respond? I think that there's value and there's other ways you can get it, all those things. It's not the be all end all. I just want to make all that stuff clear. But for me, it's a very direct way of like, I don't know, I'm his dad. I'm not going to throw him out there if he doesn't want to, but I like him out there getting hit in the face a little bit, hitting somebody else, responding to adversity. I think that there's a certain degree of mental toughness and perseverance that you can get in other sports, but that I personally do like in football. I think, and I know there's different directions. I kept trying to find an age where kids could play because that's the thing is the age. And I could not find the American Academy of Neurology, AMA, American Medical Society for Sports. There's a couple others. They don't have a firm date, so they do allow it up to parents. I don't know if Dante or anybody found anything else, but there's not a firm age to start. And yeah, I think that is part of what gives me pause but sometimes it's a little misguided. You think, well, if he plays longer, he has more likelihood of brain issues, CTE, degenerative diseases. And it's true, but to me, it's true on the back end. It's true whenever you play 4 years of high level college and then 5-10 years in the pros, that's where the blows and the repetition. I'm just not sure that 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds adding football onto the front end is what's going to lead to this. I'm still interested in it. And as I get more specifically interested, this was good. And as my son can't play till next year, I'll pour into a little more. But to me, that's at least, an initial brush and to get things going where I am.
Makes sense. My youngest son, so I have 3 sons. My oldest was a swimmer. My second and third sons are both big into JROTC, and they are both in Raiders. And so my youngest son, he had to pause Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu so that he could be up and at school at 6 a.m. for practice because they practice in the mornings, and it's running a 5K and doing the obstacle course, and which is like a 12-foot wall and an 8-foot wall and a bunch of crazy stuff. And they have all kinds of different categories and lots and lots and lots of push-ups and burpees and all the rest. And then he goes into school and is already tired. So it's actually, he's a pretty chill dude anyway, but I'm glad that he's doing that first thing in the morning, and I don't even mind getting up to take him because
that's awesome.
I think it's helping him in school.
Yeah, I mean, you always worry about how much is too much, and even like with concussion protocols and stuff, there's a lot more research and study and all of that. But even from like a academic level, it's like, how exhausted do I want my kid to be going into school the next day or the following day, or those types of things. And so it can be a lot, especially for us with kids in multiple sports. We're bouncing everywhere, but as long as they're holding their grades down, they're doing their chores at home. I think I've threatened one time to pull sports away. I'm like, if you can't get your stuff together, no more football. And
that's scary.
Yeah, of course, it's straightened the brain up.
Yeah, this study I did find was the American Academy of Neurology. They looked at 621 college football players. The average age that they started playing was 10, but these 621 players all had a concussion. And so they evaluated them. They had baseline, before the concussion. They looked at portions of them. I don't know why, not all of them, but 1 or 2 days after the concussion, and also once their symptoms have resolved. And obviously, what they're trying to see is, are the symptoms worse, longer, more severe in people who, because they had a whole wide range. The median age was 10, but some started at 16, 18, and some started 7, 8 years old. And they found no evidence that athletes who started playing tackle football at an earlier age had longer recovery times, worse performance on thinking and memory tests, worse balance, or any greater psychological problems. So it's significant in size, very reputable organization. And I think too, again, this is more anecdotal, but I think, if your son plays football 3-4 years from 7th to 9th grade, outside of acute concussions, that's a risk. That risk is greater at football than at basketball. Okay. Those things I think we kind of take for granted and just assume. But if you're looking at, my son plays and things go normal is there any issue there? And that's where I just don't think that you can find any link there. And so looking at this was interesting because it kind of hits, like I was talking about earlier, like the front end play and the back end play. The kind of the front end being, well, maybe you play really long, you play your 10-year pro. Well, who does that apply to? But at the same time, that is who the CTE studies are being done on. That is where this is coming from, and for good reason. But this was kind of, I like this age where it's okay. What's the top end realistic possibility for my son if he plays through high school, maybe in college a little bit? That's the absolute top end. And so what is going on in what would be my top end? The average age was 10. So I thought this one was really good, pretty encouraging from that standpoint.
Makes sense.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's all really good stuff. The only thing that I think is important to mention too is just the strides that have been made with education, as kids are learning to play football, even the emergence of more flag football and ways that you can still expose kids to smaller doses of certain sports, as opposed to just kind of diving in head first. No pun intended. My goodness. But I think that general principle applies like across the board with physical activity, exercise interventions, no matter what the case is. So to think that children would be any different, that like you did, hey, let's start a couple years of flag football or a couple years of maybe just in-house soccer or just like the local version. And we just, kind of dose in some exposures.
You're titrating the dose.
You're titrating the dose. Exactly. And so, that has to mean something in the large scheme of injury risk. I mean, we didn't even really talk about overuse injury potential. I know we've zeroed in on head injury, which is obviously, the scariest part about sports, but hey, I mean, kids riding bikes, skateboarding, extreme sports, sled riding, trampolines, unfortunately, as fun as those things are, those have as great of a risk, if not greater risk, to those same sort of head injuries. It's just that how prevalent American football is. It's like every group of parents somehow are faced with the decision of, do my kids play football? It just speaks to how pervasive the sport is. It is just so embedded in culture that it's like more weird not to make the football decision that it is.
You're right. That's even like, absolutely. Like I was saying, like, and trying to, even my own role that I'm almost like not pushing or nothing like that, but like, almost like, do you want to play football? Like asking, like, it's just, well, I have to at least see if they want to, right? It's football, and then sometimes, like, I don't know, maybe that's
high school. Yeah. I mean, you go to school, the football team, depending on where you go, is usually crowds are the biggest, and the scholarships then are the biggest, and the boosters are the biggest. And so it's like this massive, it's this monster that is going to exist whether you like it or not. And so I like what Joey said too, just the idea of, even just fleshing out some of the benefits of a sport like that, but ultimately how we dose it, even at a young age, all the way through. How often are you hitting in practice? How often? I mean, it's like those same principles apply across the board, even with baseball, with pitching, managing pitch count, not even just managing pitch count. How often are kids throwing in practice? What about the kid that plays for 3 teams and he's throwing at every practice? It's like, it's hard in the moment to begin to try and manage those things. But as a parent, you certainly, you have more control over it initially than you think. And the dose is really everything for, especially overuse injuries,
Yeah.
Love it.
And just from a practical standpoint, just a couple key points that I found for me as I was looking things up. If you have a son that's about to play, maybe you're not real familiar with the game, whatever the case may be. But Virginia Tech every year publishes helmet data. They evaluate 34 different youth football helmets and put out a different report every year evaluating them. So when we're talking about all these things, if you want to minimize risk, there is a way to at least maximize the protection that your son wears. That's why I love that they wear the Guardian hats. And you may say, well, why don't they wear them for games? I don't know, but I can tell you for sure in my experience, a little bit of a different generation now, which is crazy to say, but practices were way harder than games in terms of just the physicality on your body and how much you hit and doing drills and things like that. So not only that, well, if you're practicing 5 days a week and the game's 1 day a week, there's simple math there, but just literally any individual practice can be more difficult in the games in terms of the impacts that you're having. Second thing, like Dante touched on, the coaches. In your community, that's really all that matters. What are those coaches like? And there's some psychology going on there too with some of these football coaches.
Dude,
and
it's
stuff.
wild. Some of these guys out here.
But seriously, does it cross the line? How much are they hitting in practice? It's one thing to tell a kid, my arm's a little sore, shake it off. Just to get my general point here. Okay, that's one thing. That's part of football. My bell's rung. I'm a little dizzy. I stumbled when I got up. I got up slow. That's not shake it off. That's not toughness. That's where attitudes have changed for the better. What is your coach's maybe approach to something like that? Is it get back in line and tough it out the same with the kid who said his arm's a little sore? Or is it like, all right, it's head here. Just go over and see the trainer. Just, take some plays off. Let's have somebody look at you. So I think that's critical. What is the atmosphere and the environment of where your individual son would be playing? I think that's critical. And the last thing is really just, for me, would be to talk to him about those things. Because I think it's very easy for a kid to feel pressured by the coach, pressured peer. You're in a sport that's emphasizing toughness, to shake off head injuries, and I know that they talk about in the NFL, to try to hide a head injury because you don't want to come out of the game, because you don't want to miss the game that week, all those things. So just to have a real conversation, like, yes, you're allowed to play, but just understand that, when things are going on with your head, we're going to put that in a different category.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they coaches are great. Like they pay really close attention. The thing that's interesting though is when it's game day. And like this one coach got booted from a game because one of the kids had like a cutback block or something, and like it was like a blindside hit, and he was like, yeah, he's like getting all fired up. The ref was like, "Get out!" He like booted him from the game. Yeah, so I think like emotions like that kind of take over. But as far as like practice and their kids, the kids on their team, they're pretty good about protecting them and watching out for kind of. And I even told Jonah, as far as like having conversations with your son. I told Jonah, I said, like, man, these coaches aren't like mad at you. They don't want you to get hurt. I said, they're trying to get the best out of you. It's like when they're screaming at you guys, like they're trying to push you guys to your limit to see, to kind of test. But
definitely. And it's a fine line too, because if you say, hey, well, all right, a lot of the impact that's going on is in practice and I don't want to make these kids hit all the time. Well, potentially if you're on the far end of that extreme, you're not preparing the kids to go play against kids who are ready to kick their butt and are ready to hit them. And they're not used to taking the hits. They don't, you know what I mean? They're not prepared for it. So you have to walk the line between not beating these kids up every day in practice, but making sure they're prepared to go out and face the community next door that who knows what they're doing in practice. Yeah.
It's hard to tell a child that exercising 3 times a week for 60 minutes and doing this, and it's impossible to tell a child that. Maybe a 14-year-old, 16-year-old, as they understand physicality a little more. But again, we have to remember that, because I think we'll talk about youth sports and youth movement as frequent as anything, that what is the vehicle that we are going to expose kids to?
Yeah.
Physical activity. What will be the vehicle in which they start to understand physicality, physical culture in a vast array of arenas? You just watch one play of an American football game and there's sprinting, pushing, shoving, sliding. There's so much occurring that you can cultivate tons of physical skills for life for kids versus maybe some other sports. So I think that gets lost on some of this sometimes, as passionate as we all are, maybe about a given sport or, whatever it is. It's just, I think that's a helpful way to think about it, is this is what we sign up for is ultimately the vehicle by which we expose kids to exercise and physical activity. And at this point,
I can't wait till you have kids and we can revisit all this stuff.
It's going to be great. Yeah. We just talked about that this week.
When Nicole is going, I don't know about football. We go, hang on, Nicole. We have an episode you should watch.
Oh man. I don't know what I would do.
Well, that is it for us this week. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to check any of the sources that we mentioned, those are available down in the show description, either on the video or on the podcast description there. It should be available. All the links are in there. If you are not already on our mailing list, we would love for you to sign up. Go to our website. That website is www.askjoedimatteo.com. That's AskJoedimatteo.com. That site is also where you can find out about sales that we're having on all of the wonderful products that we sell, like Mag Essentials, as well as, what else is there? Old episodes of this show. Oh, episodes of the show that started all this, the Ask Joe DiMatteo show. All there on our website. Go check it out. Thank you to the three of you. And that's it. Have a great week, guys. We will talk to you again soon.